Welcome to the 10th video in the series, Foundations of Communist Organizing. Today we'll be going over the 1919 piece by Georgy Lukács, Tactics and Ethics, which I have subtitled, The Party Must Remain Separate from Bourgeois Realpolitik. In this text, Lukács takes a look at the ethical considerations and basis of socialist revolution, and how it makes itself distinct from previous revolutionary movements, for example, bourgeois revolutions. And as a quick aside, I want to say we will have a section about communist ethics and what that means within the PowerPoint series. Continuing, he makes the case that the proletarian revolution cannot engage in realpolitik even in individual terms, since the ethical position of the proletariat is one and the same with its revolutionary movement, the class struggle. Class struggle is both the method of revolution and at the same time produces the ultimate objective, communism. Therefore, the means of proletarian revolution are one and the same with the goal, and as such, what is ethical is whatever brings the class struggle to the fore and makes class conflict clear. Socialist ethics, thus, are determined by whether or not the manner of action brings about socialism, and to what degree. In other words, how far forwards it brings a class struggle. Our understanding of what develops the class struggle is informed by class consciousness, which tells each individual their role in the class struggle and the historical conditions which determine such. Since what is necessary for liberation determines the tactical methods of the proletariat, and since liberation is necessarily moral in these conditions, whatever correct tactics there are, no more or no less, are what are ethical. For example, a slave seeking to liberate themselves would be imminently ethical to kill their master if it is in service to liberating them. Anything else is slave morality, and is the morality of the slave master. If the action of killing the master does not bring liberation to the slave, then the killing may be unethical. It is the same for proletarian struggle against the bourgeoisie. There's also the consideration of individual intentions and the determination of individual ethical action. Full moral and ethical correctness requires every communist to engage in correct tactical actions in the form of the real movement as class struggle, and do so with the correct motivations, since accidental action holds no ethical weight. Ethics for socialists, therefore, require an ethical perspective, which leads to correct tactics. Because we do not have full knowledge of everyone's place in the class struggle, as an astronomer might be able to anticipate a comet, though our knowledge increases with ever greater organization and centralization, all communists must assume that they may have the greatest responsibility in the class struggle. As such, since ethical action in terms of intentions are individual and are based on individual class consciousness and sense of responsibility, all communists must therefore have the greatest scientific understanding of the historical political conditions of the struggle. Since the morally correct action for socialists is derived from proper understanding of the given historico-philosophical situation, which is understood through class consciousness, this understanding tells the individual socialists their level of individual responsibility in the movement. What needs to be understood, though, is that ethics do not prescribe correct action. Rather, ethics emerge from class struggle. In the course of this struggle, however, we may be confronted with choices that are equally unpalatable. Under these conditions, the correct action will be to sacrifice towards the higher idea, which is necessarily in terms of collective action. It must be imperative in the world historical situation. Based on this, we can also identify what constitutes as a lack of ethics on the part of an individual communist, or in terms of tactics more broadly. 1. Harming class consciousness. Anything that mystifies the class struggle, or compromises with the bourgeois order, or recognizes bourgeois right, legal structure, or moral or ethical considerations, simply confuses the proletariat and saves off what is necessary for the true conditions of liberation, is unethical in action. 2. Ignoring personal class consciousness. In addition, any rejection of individual responsibility and consciousness, or the rejection or ignoring of one's class consciousness and thereby role in the revolutionary movement is moral cowardice and unethical in character. And 3. Carrying out actions not in line with class consciousness. Incorrect tactical action in the construction of socialism is also unethical, or failure to carry out action in service to the higher idea, especially when sacrifice is necessary, when under conditions of only bad choices to choose between. And that is my summary of the 1919 piece by Georgi Lukács, Tactics and Ethics. If you'd like to go over the quotations I derived this from, then please feel free to go into the description below, and you'll find a link to the Google Doc, which has all the quotations and my summaries of those. In addition, there's a link to United Marxist Pact Discord server. Please consider giving that a join, and you'll find people who are interested in talking about this sort of thing. With that said, tomorrow we will be going over the 1919 piece by the Third International, the platform of the Communist International. Thank you for joining me for today's topical summary, and I hope to see you then.